coast, my friend.
Are we live?
We're live.
We're live.
We're live.
Welcome back to the Coast to Coast podcast. We're excited to be here. Before we get going, like, subscribe, comment, share. Check out the links down below. Click on the link tree. Check out some stuff once this gets posted up for permanence anyways. And with that, I'm going to pass the ball over here to Nick, and we're going to hit the ground running with this one.
Today we got a couple of guests. ASNs. We got Pat. She is a common law counselor of law. And then we have Paula, who is the county recorder for Mendocino County, California. How you guys doing?
We're good.
Good.
Happy to be here.
Doing good.
Awesome.
Well, we're excited. I know I'm excited.
I'm always excited.
Oh, took the words right out of my mouth there, buddy. Thanks.
Here you
go. So before we get going, would you two kind of mind giving us a quick background and a history or a biography, if you will?
Years and years ago, when my mother was sick, I took her to the doctor one day and she was complaining of pain, and all her doctor did was shove a prescription in her face. And that made something click in my head that, wait a minute, this doctor needs to be getting to the root cause of her pain and figure out what that root cause is and fix that instead of just shoving a prescription in her face. So as time went on, my mother, God rest her soul, she was very dependent on the doctors. But me looking in, I was able to see that things were not just right. And then I remember when President Clinton was in office, at that time I was working for the federal government as a civilian employee, and something about his presidency, it just didn't set well with my spirit. And I don't, for a few years after that, I just let it go. But then there were other things in my life that happened that just was clicking in my head, telling me this isn't right. We have to pay for this. We have to pay for that. We have to pay for something else. And you got to walk this chalk line and you got to do this. And if you don't do this, this and this and this is going to happen to you. So that propelled me into the study, should I say, of sovereignty. And I have two grown children. When my son was growing up, he was in and out of foster care, in and out of group homes. And that experience, that also taught me something is right. I'm his parent, I'm his mother. My ex-husband was his father. And I'm like, wait a minute, why is my son being in this system when we're his parents? The Bible says that we're the parents, so we have a right to discipline our children in the way we see fit. So I have been studying sovereignty for going on 10 years. A lot of people out there say sovereign citizen. Let me correct you right now. You cannot be sovereign and you cannot be a citizen at the same time.
Right.
A citizen with a capital C is actually a slave of the corporate government. And yes, I said the government is corporate. The United States federal government is a corporation. For those of you out there listening, I challenge you to read the Clearfield Doctrine. The Clearfield Doctrine says specifically that because of the fact that the United States federal government uses their reserve notes, that they lose their sovereignty. So that makes them a corporation. So we're being, should I say, governed by a corporate entity. So it's like we're taking orders from Walmart or Home Depot or Target. That's what it boils down to.
Right.
So I started studying sovereignty. I remember years ago, I saw a video on YouTube saying that your certificate of live birth was worth millions of dollars. I was very skeptical back then. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense, But over the course of time, with all the stuff I've learned, I've verified it in law. I've verified it by reading certain documents. I've read, I don't remember if I read the whole, there's some document that I years ago about how mothers, when they have children, they're supposed to be taken care of by the government, meaning given money. That never happened to me. And I have two grown children. You know, so I'm like, something is really wrong somewhere. And so I still am in a lot of, should I say, patriot groups on Facebook. And what got me to the American States Assemblies when I corrected my status in December of 2020 was a lot, maybe probably about 95% of what I studied from other people on Facebook lined up with what the founder of the American States Assemblies teaches. And basically, now this might blow your mind. When we're born, we are all American nationals. We are all true American people without given unalienable rights that nobody can take away from us. Now, I the document that there's U.S. Supreme Court case law or state case law in it that tells us that Congress actually created the status of a U.S. citizen just to have jurisdiction over us. And when I've done a lot of studying over the years, and
Could you say that one more time? Your Wi-Fi
here.
was a little bit choppy there. Could you say that one more time? Just that last part?
Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember what I just said.
She was rolling.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I do get on a roll. This is something I'm very passionate about. But
yeah.
I have read law that I use in my documents for my clients that says that a U.S. citizen is a slave to the corporate government. And that's basically why we have to pay taxes. We have to pay mortgages. We have to pay registration fees on our cars. We have to pay for everything. Sure. But once you correct your status and you put all of these agencies on notice of your corrected status, well, I will say I haven't paid taxes in years. And I don't have the IRS coming after me.
Wow. Yeah, see, and that's something that's interesting, since you touched on the monetary thing. You know, before we receive our paychecks, we have taxes taken out of the paychecks. After we've received our paychecks, when we go to the store to buy something, there's, you know, taxes, sales tax and state tax and all that jazz. We have to do our vehicle registrations out here in California. We also have to smog our vehicles. And it's just, it's interesting because I remember I was talking with somebody, this is multiple years ago, and this was one of the people that worked in finance at the entity that I worked at the time. And he was saying something along the lines of, when everything's all said and done, and you've received your paycheck and you've spent it on your groceries and your gas and all that, when you factor in all the taxes that you pay, you're actually paying about 63% in tax when you add all of them together. But we can discuss that a little bit at length, I think maybe a little bit later. But Paula, how about you?
Right. So I'm Paula Giroux, and I'm Mendocino County on California. I came to the American Nationals almost 2 years ago when I smelled a rat in the country. The plans of demons were afoot, and I knew something wasn't quite right. So actually was through a friend, sent me through Michelle Ford's work that then brought me into the Assembly's work, American State Assemblies. And it took me several months to feel like I had vetted it enough that I could believe it and trust that it was the right path. And so I corrected my status, which is something we're not told that we even have or that we can do. And I changed from being a U.S. citizen to becoming an American national. And then I went further and did more paperwork and became a California state citizen, which just means that now I get to volunteer and serve in our reconstructed government. It's all work and very little play. And it's not quite as bloody as the revolution of 1776, but it's mentally challenging. So what we've been doing and what our focus as nationals is not so much to just change our status and then live our life, which you can do as an American national. You owe no duty to the government. You owe you just need to keep the peace and uphold the public law. But those of us that have gone a little further and deeper are actually focused on reconstructing our lawful government, which is the land and soil jurisdiction. According to what I've learned, there's 3 major jurisdictions on the planet, one being land, which is where all the people live, one being air, and one being water or sea, the sea jurisdiction. And then there's entities associated with each of those. The British territorial entity and the Lord Mayors of London tend to be involved in the sea or water jurisdiction, which involves a lot of commerce and merchant law of the sea and things like that. And then the air jurisdiction is supposedly run by the Vatican, which is the business side of the Holy Roman Empire.
Wow.
Is there any real
I
is
did
there
not
any
know
real
that
connection to the acronym, or is it even an acronym with the law with land, air, and water? I'd seen something about that a couple weeks ago.
That's what
Maybe one of
we're
y'all.
told. You can't, in trying to research a lot of this stuff, the internet is great, but it is also limited. You're not going to find ancient documents, not easily, only the most commonly used ones that benefit those that are in control. But that's how, at least it's a way to memorize the 3 jurisdictions, land, air, and water law. Yeah, and so the land, the air, and the water have been imposed on top. They've been overlaid on the lands of the whole planet by various governments and entities. So that's what we're all struggling under. That's why things aren't right. That's why people aren't helping people, and it's governments controlling people, making the decisions for us instead of us working together to self-govern everywhere we are, which requires, and then it goes into the religion thing a little, because it requires a moral standing. Do no harm, don't kill, don't steal, don't bear false witness. So a lot of common law is commonly spoken of to be inspired by the 10 Commandments, being that the 3 major land race religions agree on those 10 Commandments as standards of how we can treat each other.
I see. And I think something that you touched on is worth mentioning. I've seen it all over the place on the internet. These claims that American state nationals are basically, quote, anarchists and don't subscribe to government and this and that and the other. But I think you cleared it up very well just a second ago. There is a form of government. And
it's been asleep since the Civil War.
Right.
Exactly. So it's not that, you know, if I were to say, hey, I want to correct my status, it's not me saying I want nothing to do with the government and this and that and the other. It's me saying, hey, I want my life back and I want things to run the way that they're supposed to be ran.
Right.
And I understand you're doing, like you said, you're the Mendocino County Recorder. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what you do in that role?
Yeah, so I can assist people in recording their paperwork. So I make sure that they've done it right. They can get their paperwork off of the TASA website now. It can be generated for them, so they don't even have to pull it onto their computer and fiddle with it. They can put their information into the land recording office, which we call the LRO, and that's countrywide. So then I make sure that that's been done correctly. I witness their autographing of their paperwork and their thumbprinting, because our thumbprint is our seal. It's our own personal seals. And if they're not right here in my county, I can witness them via Zoom on the whole state. At this point, there's a little over 14 recorders on California, and since it's a big state, we can work across county lines at this point until we get bigger in terms of our assembly numbers. And then what we do is we publish those documents so that they are a fact in law. And they get publicly published for 61 days, and actually they're there longer. And traditionally people have done that by posting their documents either in a newspaper for 61 days or say on a library or courthouse bulletin board. The trick with that is documenting every day that it's there. So the LRO, and I'm sure people could come up with other kinds of public publishing that would probably cover the same thing. But basically we record, we publish, those records get kept on the county, on the state, and the originals go back to the living man or woman.
Okay. But it's not like someone can create a public post on Facebook, for example. Something like that wouldn't necessarily cut it, right? It's got to be in one of the avenues you had mentioned.
Yeah, I think, there's, in a world of possibilities, there's always that possibility, but you would still need to be able to prove it, which requires some sort of documentation handed to somebody else. For us, we have a package of papers we can carry with us. And if we're dealing with authorities that don't know about it, we can show them our paperwork, we can show them our credential card, and which also will QR code them to our paperwork on that LRO. So in a way, it's helpful for us to have that verification easily addressed, seen by others if we so choose. And then within the assembly, it helps us to know who's a part of our assembly, who can qualify for being a juror, because setting up our land and soil jurisdiction courts is a big part of it. That's one of the 4 pillars of the state assembly. So yeah, you might be able to do that, and you could probably, there's ways to prove that you were publicly published, but it's just a matter now of what's easier and what's easier to verify as well.
Gotcha.
I have a question for you that I pulled from one of the Facebook articles that I saw. Can you explain for us what is the difference in LRO and LRS? Sure.
So the LRS is the land recording system. It was, I think that one got up and running first, and Anna Von Reitz was a part in helping get that going. So the LRS is run by a private man. And the great thing about that is he will generate your paperwork for free once you've created an account. the recording and publishing fees are the same. Each state puts out their own recording and publishing fees. So it's the same on the LRS as it is on the LRO. The LRO being the Land Recording Office, which is run by the Federation of States, which is the grouping of all the states to work on the international jurisdiction. Since each state is a nation, they well, I'm going to get lost in the weeds here, and I won't answer your question. I'll continue with the LRO. So the Land Recording Office is run by the Federation of States, so it's on our own servers. The money goes to support, half of it goes to the state that you publish on, and half of it goes to the Federation of States. And again, the Federation of States is all the states working together to defend ourselves in the international jurisdiction. Because of jurisdictions, I, as a lowercase p people, am only on the soil jurisdiction and in my county, and that's the top 6 inches. But then when you get into uppercase p people, then you're talking about the land jurisdiction, which is the state, which is all of what's under the top 6 inches of soil. And that is always in an international sort of jurisdiction, because it can interact with other states, which are considered nations. So the LRO now, in the last 8 months, has really taken leaps and bounds, and they can also generate your paperwork for a small fee. And it's much easier for us recorders using the LRO. It's easier for us to correct things, to change things. The LRS is a little more closed. If you want to have something corrected, you only have a 10-day window from when you first publish. Unless it's some extreme extenuating thing, you might be able to get in touch with the man who runs it, and you might be able to jimmy some things. But I've found it incredibly difficult, because I've been helping people who've either been started on the LRS or started a long time ago, before I was even a part of the assembly, before the systems were as worked out as they are now. But the LRO, for the whole countrywide, it's going to benefit your state. It's going to benefit the Federation of States working together.
Thank you.
Okay. I think my state's still LRS only.
A lot of them are, especially back east. They've really, I don't know why. It might just be because it takes learning something a little bit different. But having watched us transition in California from pretty much the LRS to both has been amazing. And then, like I said, in the last 8 to 10 months, the LRO is grown by leaps and bounds, and the tech people are accessible. We're always giving them ideas for, suggestions, and they're able to follow up on a lot of them. Very responsive, and just an easier system.
So
And then it's tapped into the assemblies. It's easy for the assemblies to check on things, to find out who their qualified jurors are from there. And then, you can tap into the Sign in America program, and different things that will matter most. You can get on the Matter Most channels. There's over 400 of those in the Assembly Matter Most channel that are incredibly valuable, full of documents, videos, information, and with the capability of private chatting with people as well. It's becoming the repository, I think, of our government, our reconstructed government.
I got a question. So all the assemblies, there's New York, there's California, all the different states. How much do they communicate with each other to try to stay up with everything?
That's been hard to tell. I'm only being the coordinator on my county, so I don't have access to the state coordinator calls. They have a weekly call with all the state coordinators, and Terry, and I think Anna, but I'm not sure if Anna's always on that. I think so. And so you'd think that there would be a lot more intercommunication going on, but I do hear from people from other states that are struggling, like you say, to get a response from their coordinator. It's really tough. If anybody is on a state and they feel like their coordinator is asleep at the wheel, it's highly recommended to get in touch with Terry Som or Anna herself, and I can put links for those emails in. And
That'd be great.
yeah, just check in with Terry Som is basically the 50 state super coordinator. She's
Okay, that was
coordinating the
gonna be another
coordinators.
question. I was
to-
going to ask if there's like a main person.
Yeah, so I think for the state coordinators it would be Terry, and she's pretty responsive to her emails, and yeah, I can put that in the chat later.
All right.
Okay. I think I have a question for Pat, actually. Can you hear me okay, Pat?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic. I wanted to touch on, like, get your perspective on marriage licenses. Okay, so for example, I'm a married man, right? Happily, let
right.
me just throw that out
Right.
there to the universe right now. But I came across not necessarily an article, but it was more of a post in a Facebook group that had basically made mention that in order to correct your status, you would have to go through a divorce with your spouse. And I'm like, whoa, hey, hold on now. So I was wondering if maybe you would be able to clarify that a little bit for us.
That is not true.
Good.
But let me explain. Let me explain that if you get married, I don't want to really throw terms out there that people may not be familiar with. But if you get married in the de facto, which is corporate government, and you have a marriage license, that means that the United States federal government is part of your marriage. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to hear that and they're going to maybe think I'm crazy, but no, it's a fact. It is a fact because everything that happens, I'm not sure about the rest of the planet, but I know everything that happens in this country is contracts. Everything is contract law. So, marriage license that you get from, whatever court or wherever you get it from, it's a contract, and the United States federal government is part of that contract. So if you get married in lawful government, the only two people that are involved in marriage is you and your spouse. But no, you do not have to get divorced or anything like that to correct your status. There will be differences because, like, for example, Brandon, you corrected your status, didn't you? Or you're in the process of doing it now?
I am still.
So once your status.
Yeah, I'm still doing a whole
Once
bunch
you're-
of research. Nick is actually ahead of me in the process right now.
Okay. Once your status is corrected, you can live differently because you will be living as a free man on the land and soil of the state that you live on, compared to your spouse who still has to pay taxes, still has to pay a mortgage, still has to pay car registration. So that's basically the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You like
You're
that answer,
welcome.
Brandon? You happy with that?
I do. I really was not about to divorce my wife. That's just not in the cards.
Not
Right,
happening.
exactly.
We'll get remarried, honey. As soon as this thing's done.
Yeah, I can hear that. I can just envision in my brain how that conversation would go.
Dude, I want to mention to these
man.
two to see what they think about that job application paper that my daughter had.
Oh, do you have it? Can you share it?
I don't.
Or do you
have
just wanna
with me,
describe
but
it real quick?
I just want to mention it.
I think that's a
So-
good idea.
like that article that we went over last week on the episode where one detective, whatever he was, a lot of them are trying to denounce like American nationals are really a thing. It's like we made it up. But what we found interesting was that day we were getting ready to do this episode last week, my wife was helping one of our middle daughters fill out paperwork for a job she's getting. And she came across something. While I was at work, and she had to send me a picture of it. She was like, "You got to see this." On one of her papers, what was it, Brandon? Employee verification.
It was something like that. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it had some specific check boxes. I think
Yeah.
that you're trying to
Well,
get
yeah,
to, right?
but it's a federal paper. It's the Homeland Security form. So what was interesting was when you go down and you check whether you're a United States citizen or if you have a green card or whatever, nationals were one of the options on that federal form. So if we're not a real entity, then why was it on a federal form as an option?
Mhm. That's right.
Exactly.
Mostly the
Exactly.
de facto will tell you that that national status category is for their territories, like Guam, and places like that, Puerto Rico, and Samoa, American Samoa. But supposedly, when the founders, you know, created what we know as the American government, they needed a way to tell the difference between the Tories and the people that were claiming to be American. So they, there's people from all over Europe and the world and from all different countries. So they needed to have a way, and that the 1779 document that we do, which is the simple one pager that makes you an American national, was kind of based on that information that the founders, had a document that they would have people do to state who they were, so they knew who they were working with.
Okay.
Nick, I found the picture that you had sent in our line chat. And the part that you had highlighted says, "I attest under penalty of perjury that I am," and then it gives you 4 boxes that you can check. The first one was a citizen of the United States. The second one was a non-citizen national of the United States. So that's, if that helps clarify, that's what he was referring to.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. It looks like we have a question from the Facebook group about, would the same go for adoption?
I think they're referencing the marriage license.
That's what
situation.
I'm thinking as well. If we could clarify on that.
Yes.
Yes, we've got confirmation. So it was that. Thank you, Farris.
So what was the question originally that would be going the same for the adoption? I'm lost in the weeds.
Farris, would you be able to ask that? I think you have a better idea.
Yeah, so I think so when you get married under maritime law or the corporation, you sign a license, and that's basically the proof that you have made that person to person junction under the eyes of the law, not only God but the law. So when you adopt a child, you fill out similar paperwork that the state recognizes as that child being yours. What's the process if you have either adopted or plan to adopt, and you are either you have changed your status, but how does that work if your child? If I know there's paperwork involved with your kids that are by birth yours, but how does that work with adoption? And if you know, how does that? I think that's what they're getting at. How does that work?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So when you register anything to somebody else, like the state, when you register your marriage, when you register your offspring, when they get born, you have gifted. Regis is like a gift to the king. Regis is king. So you've gifted that to them. You've given them controlling interest, which is why they can say what happens to your property when you have a divorce, or to your offspring who you've given them as children. So what you can do is you can unregister your property or your marriage from the de facto, and then you can do a lawful marriage and a lawful marriage testimony. And then you also can do a baby deed on your offspring that you birth naturally. And you could also, I think, do a baby deed on an adopted. What we end up doing is sending those baby deeds with a cover letter to the Secretary of State of where that offspring was born, to give notice on their record. We don't know exactly what they do with that, if they ever do anything with it. Sometimes they send it back saying, what do we do with this? But you're just trying to correct the record. You're giving notice. You don't really require them to do anything except maybe put it on the record, if they would be so kind. So I'm imagining you could do that with an adoption.
The word deed is not necessarily quote unquote property as we all have been raised to believe the word to mean. It really means God given under law, right? It's just God given. It's yours, whether it's a land or a child, or that's really what I mean.
Yeah, if you registered your offspring, like most of us did because we didn't know any better, we gave our children to the state as wards.
Crazy.
And then with the social security number, and then there's all this hypothecation that happened with those numbers, creating other municipal and territorial entities that they then use offshore to make money off of. And
and that's the part that really upsets me, because I guarantee you, had I known that this would be, my kids are mine.
Yeah,
my kids are mine.
Oh.
and my wife's. They're Nick, you're gonna have to take over. Now I'm getting all upset.
if we do stuff and we don't tell the government everything, they get on us about withholding information, but yet they get to withhold all the information they want, don't they?
right.
Do we want to go down that rabbit hole right now, buddy?
I'm just saying.
We know what they do, but what can we do?
Go there.
What can we do? There's some things.
Brandon, I can comprehend how you feel when you say that your offspring are your children. Yeah, biologically they are your children. However, like Paul was saying, when you register something, and it's very tricky. It's done through the certificate of live birth, which is different. That's a different document than the birth certificate, which the doctor gives you at the hospital. The certificate of live birth, it's actually a bond that's traded on the securities market, and the federal government makes money off of us. So when that bond is issued, when we are very tiny babies, we're probably about a month and a half old to 2 months old. At that time, we are all worth at least $650,000.
That's crazy.
But if you get a copy of your certificate of live birth, you will see on there's a section that says informant, and it has your mother listed as the informant. So the government tricks your mother into telling the government that, yes, whoever she's married to, his offspring has now been registered with the federal government. And that's part of what makes the child a ward. And also in my profession as a common law counselor of law, I wanted to share this with you. Let me see if I can find this here real quick. Okay, there is a U.S. Supreme Court ruling of Hen Hollow versus Jones Administrators. And it says, inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, get that, an artificial person, an abstraction and a creature of the mind only. A government can interface only with other artificial persons. The imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. The legal manifestation of that is that no government, as well as any law, agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with anything other than corporate artificial persons and the contracts between them. So that basically tells you the federal government cannot interact with me because I have corrected my status. So I'm now recognized in law as a living woman. I'm not a corporate entity. So they can't interact with me. So if I'm traveling down the street and I get a ticket, let me back up. Every kind of document you get, driver's license, social security number, bank cards, ATM cards, bank statements. If you have to apply for unemployment, you get mail from them. All of that has your name in all caps. Your name in all caps is the corporate entity that the federal government created so that they could do business with you. Okay? So now I've corrected my status, so they can't do business with me anymore. That's basically what that says. Now, as far as your offspring, I have read documentation that says that because of the fact that you register your child under that certificate of live birth, that child is a ward of the court because they tricked your mother into being an informant to let the federal government know that your father fathered a child or his offspring. But in biblical law, when a man and a woman have a child, that child belongs to that man and woman. So the government has no say in what happens. Now, when my son was growing up, he was in and out of the CPS system. Unfortunately, I didn't know back then what I know now, and I was having problems with my son as a divorced mother, and I contacted CPS voluntarily for help. Well, had I known then what I know now, there's no way I would have called CPS. There is no way on God's green earth I ever would have called CPS because that gives them the authority to say, oh, well, you have to do this class and that class to get your son back. Excuse me? He is my DNA. He is my organic property.
That's right.
So why do I have to go to your classes and pass through your hoops to get my son back?
And if you think about it, and for the people out there watching or the people that are going to see this on YouTube later or hear it in whatever podcast streaming platform they use, if you think about what Pat just said, right? It makes sense. It really does. When you said that when we're born, we're basically, a ward of the state, if you will, right? And when CPS gets involved, they have the quote unquote authority, so to speak, through that process. I love what you just said. Had you known that, you never would have made the call. And that's stuff that we don't think about. So the simple fact that that entity can come in and tell you what to do with your kids kind of solidifies that. If you really think about it and open our minds to the possibility that this is actually what's going on. If you connect the dots, you'll see whatever picture's being painted.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
You might go see a picture of Brandon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to. No.
Oh man.
I only have, I think, maybe two more questions that I've thought about or that I've found. And the first one is, I know earlier when we first opened up, we kind of hinted at taxes a little bit. And I think that's a big one for a lot of people because I mean, money is money and everybody loves it. And, you know, they want to keep as much of it as they possibly can. And I know, Pat, you had explained that, you know, you haven't had to do the pay taxes and all that in a very long time. What we're a little bit unclear on here, I think, that we want to clarify for anyone out there who's witnessing this, is what does that process look like? Like, is there a specific form? Do you have to get in contact with a specific entity? Is it just for federal taxes, or does that also apply at the state level? Like when you go buy groceries, do you have something? And because I know where I work for a federal contractor. So I have, when I need to go purchase something for work, I have this paper that I take with me that says, look, I work for this entity. This entity doesn't pay taxes. Whoever I speak to goes to their manager. Their manager comes over and says, okay, no taxes for you. So essentially, I'm trying to figure out what is that process and how does that all work so that we can explain it for everybody.
Right. So
Yeah.
in the as a national, if you're not a federal, territorial, municipal, or military employee or dependent, then you can write these two letters. They basically say the same thing, and they go to the Secretary of State on the one in Washington, D.C., and well, actually it goes to the IRS, and then in New York, and it goes to the Internal Revenue Service on Washington, D.C. So one is for the territorial British IRS, and one is for the municipal Vatican IRS. Then we give them both notice, even though it's the same man, Charles P. Rettig, I think, who's Secretary of State right now still. And it's just basically letting them know that we know now that we're no longer British merchant seamen or withholding agents or any such thing, and that, you know, we you know, there's a whole paragraph on there. And then so that's our giving them notice. What happens is they'll often send you a letter back from Kansas or somewhere else saying, we need 60 days to, you know, dear taxpayer, even though you're trying to say you're not a taxpayer, they still put that on you. And some people like to rebut that and send them more things, rebutting that. Others of us just gave them the one notice, and that was good enough for us. We got several letters back saying they need 60 more days to figure out our account. And then some of us got a voucher back that we know nothing of what to do with. Some people think that you can use it to pay off debts or to pay the IRS if they come after you, or we have no idea. But then most of us haven't been bothered. And some of us have not paid taxes previous to changing our status and never had an issue. But
Now,
if,
when
you're
say
doing commerce and you're trying to buy something from somebody else who's in an incorporated status, then they're again in that sea or air jurisdiction of commerce, so that they are subject to the taxations that the federal or territorial government puts on them. So by that, if you're interacting with them, you're still going to have to give them their taxes a little bit, like through that. But when you're just having a private trade, and you're a private private man or woman, you're not subject to their codes. And that's buried in their code. Very few IRS agents have read the entire code. Very few people have read the code.
Well, maybe
there's
the
probably
new
one for each of
87,000
the.
We'll see.
Yeah, right.
Now, when you say they might send you a letter asking for 60 days, do you think my brain just goes to this area? Would that have anything to do with what we were talking about earlier about the publication after you've corrected the status, do you think?
I have no idea. That's a good question.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I'm trying to think.
And
as if I
usually
were a
you do
sneaky
that
kind of person.
after like 61 days of being published. You might
Okay.
wait to do those till you feel like nobody's rebutted what you've put out there publicly. Nobody's been rebutted that we've ever heard of. You know, if they do rebut it, then they're admitting to the fraud. So they're kind of in a bind. They can't rebut it. But they will, you know, they will still try to strong arm everybody into becoming, you know, back into a U.S. citizen. You could become a U.S. citizen real quick, real easy. Just, you know, any license, any registration, any voting. We rescind our voter. We revoke our voter. We cancel our ability to vote in their corporate elections. Which, you know, could maybe go, oh no, then I don't have any power in that U.S. corporation anymore. But did you ever have it before?
No.
Right. Pat, did you want to touch on the state aspect of the question with taxes?
No, Paula pretty much covered it all, but what I was going to say is, you know, as far as the federal level, you know, once you correct your status, before I go into that, I do want to say it's paperwork, and we are being taught how to self-govern, which means we are being taught how to handle our own affairs. So, for example, I did the same thing Paula did. When I corrected my status, I did the 1779 declaration first. And then as time went on, I got more involved in the assembly, and I wanted to help build, reconstruct our lawful de jure government. So I did the 928 package. And part of that is it gives you more layers of protection. There are different layers of protection that you need from the de facto government, and you have to actually read the paperwork. You have to read the forms that you're supposed to fill out, but once you get them notarized and recorded, you actually have to mail them out to different de facto agencies to put them on notice of your corrected status, because if you don't mail them out, they're not going to know. So like, for example, when I did my 928 package, I'm very bold because my father was a police officer. I have a degree in criminal justice, and my ex-husband had been in jail. My son right now is in prison. He's still a U.S. citizen. So I have to, you know, teach him stuff and correct his status. I myself, as a U.S. citizen, was in jail. So you have to have an aptitude for reading, because there's a lot of layers that you have to get to put the de facto agencies on notice so that they don't bother you. If you just notarize and record your 779 and you did away somewhere, nothing's going to change for you. You have to notify these agencies that you are no longer in the jurisdiction, because if you don't, they're going to be coming after you.
Right.
And, you know, unfortunately, in my line of work, I have some clients that they haven't taken those steps to do that. So they have me help them, which is fine, because some of them are extremely busy. You know, some of them have businesses. I have one client who's a doctor, and I kind of have to hold her hand and tell her, okay, well, you got to do A, B, C, E. And if you don't do all of these, then you're going to be hounded by whoever.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, where Nick's at right now is, you know, like you were saying, buddy, you reached out to your recorder, you received your paperwork, you did your due diligence, you got you went in, had it notarized, red thumbprint and all that jazz, and now you're in the process of actually finding these agencies and sending it out, right, bud?
Right. And I wasn't going to really ask this because But Paula mentioned about like if it seems like your assembly's sleeping, like, because I understand right now they're all volunteers, obviously. But if somebody's having a hard time getting hold of their state coordinator, where you gotta, what do you do? Like, because I'm kind of stuck right now.
Go to the
Yeah.
next nearest one. Just keep trying them all. If you go on the tasa.americanstatenationals.org, you can link to any of the 50 states. And I know some of the
Right.
states are asleep. They've had people stand up in the past. They do. There has been a last man standing on every state, but some of them, they go in and out. And so I would say if your state's not very active and you can't get in touch with them, try the next one over. Anyone surrounding you. I know Ohio is very active. New York is somewhat active. Georgia's very active. Florida's really active. I think Florida might be actually close to having their General Assembly standing. Washington State, of course. California is very active. We have a town hall that a lot of people come to from all across the country. It seems like none of the others are. We have a lot of people in California, and
Well, like, so you get copies and they go to different people, but you're supposed to give a copy of every single one of the papers you do to your coordinator, right?
not necessarily. Your recording secretary should send a copy to your state record keeper and to your county record keeper. These are all assembly positions. And then you should be given your originals. That's how that's supposed to go.
Yeah, I have to talk to somebody because mine for New York looks different, and there's not. It's almost like I keep looking and looking, and I'm not seeing a lot of assembly people. I got one coordinator, and I can't find anybody. Like a lot of them, like where you're at California, there's like different counties that have them, and here I can only find one guy for the state.
And are you familiar with John Petruccio?
Mm-mm.
He's been doing a lot of work across the nation. He's been doing a leadership and self-governance training that's been really valuable. So he's on New York, and he would be really good for you to tap into as far as networking.
All right.
And he might know. Let's see if I can figure out the best way to get in touch with him.
Now, just to throw this out there, let's say hypothetically speaking, right? Hypotheticals, watch out. Let's say hypothetically there were 10 in New York. Would Nick be able to go to any one of them, or does he have to go to like the county closest to him or something like that?
For doing his paperwork? I'm going to assume that most states are going to be at the same level as us in California in terms of allowing all the recorders to work across county lines. Because we don't have a recorder on every county. We don't have people on every county. We have 58 counties. We have maybe half of those with active people on them. And there may be other people who corrected their status and don't want to have anything to do with government, and but we just don't know about them.
I'm gonna have to start an assembly in my county. Darn it.
That's what a lot of us end up having to do. Is like, well, there's no coordinator on my county. I guess I'm it.
So there are with the census that came out this last January. I think we're at like 332 million in America, and I know that this answer is not going to be probably known exactly, because I know some would say me getting into this now, I'm just learning things, and I would say that it's kind of in its infancy as far as volunteers to be coordinators and such, and like you're all talking about. So my question is, what is the hopeful projection as it pertains to population comparable to the overall population of America and ASNs? Is there any kind of understanding of how fast the growth is? And is there any, I mean, I'm a statistical guy. I know Brandon is too. And I'm curious
Ferris likes
to know,
numbers.
you know, because this helps me to understand what I need to do once I change my status as a volunteer to be active. Like, well, what kind of ground do I need to hit, and how do I need to run, kind of thing. You know, how do we help this get out there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, I just lost it.
You're like me.
Not looking
Yeah,
for a number.
I've
I
been
know that
on
may not be
meetings
available.
since 6 o'clock. So,
Wow.
let's see. So so there resources. I'm going to say Terry again, who I put in the chat earlier, her email. She's going to be probably the best point person at this time, other than also just coming to California's town halls and stuff, and asking around there. Terry should, in all theory, be helping the states get connected to their coordinators, to becoming coordinators, and all that. So there is help, and I'm going to say it's going to be through Terry is going to be the easiest. And then, so I did put her chat in there, or not her chat, excuse me, her email earlier on.
I think it's worth mentioning for the viewers that this is a growth process, not just in population, but in the process itself.
Yeah.
And how, like, you've answered with some, you've had some hypothetical questions come at you, and you're answering with assumptions based on your educated background, what you know so far, and you're pointing people in the right direction. That's the only way something like this can grow. I did have a question also, real quick, about, well, actually a couple, but I'll stick with one for now. How much have y'all seen? Let me ask like this: how difficult has it been from other people once they've changed their status, dealing with something as simple as an ID they used to have, like a driver's license? You walk into a place of business that require a state ID versus the new ID, and how much pushback do they get because they're the company or location is not familiar with that ID, and they're like, I don't know what this is. I need a state ID. How do you get around that? Is it just a constant educational opportunity, step by step, one by one by one?
It is, and it is tricky because the de facto doesn't want to acknowledge certain things. Like if our credential cards don't have an expiration date, we jokingly say it's when we die. They also don't have your address on it. Where you domicile is not on there. But anyone who has the capacity to look at a QR code can be taken to the E-Verify on the LRO if you've gone through the LRO, or the LRS also has a QR code thing. So they can see your address eventually if they dig around there in your papers. But yeah, there's different pushbacks. Like I've had my bank, the notary at my bank say they couldn't take it because there was no expiration date. She needed an expiration date. It's that bureaucratic. But they said, oh, but you could use it up at the counter to cash a check.
That's
right. And I've used it in the post office a couple times now. Different people have done different things. Some people have taken it out when they've had a Leo stop, a traffic stop, and given that to them. It is an opportunity to educate them. It's like, have you seen this yet? You know, do you know about nationals, American nationals? And some coordinators just love educating everyone. But some people have given that to them and had the Leos take it back and kind of scan it and figure it out. And, you know, on the back of it, it says, what does it say? You know, that you have the right for common carry and different things like that, not to be detained. And most of the time people end up, you know, being given the card back and told to, you know, drive safely. I don't know anybody personally who's been taken in because of it. Or I know one person a family that has crossed the Mexican border with it.
Wow.
So it just
What
depends. It's probably a slow process. And as far as numbers, I know Ferris keeps asking for the numbers, and so many of us keep asking for the numbers. How many of us are there? I know here in California, there's probably over 2,000, which, it's a tiny, tiny percentage. That's just the ones we know of.
That's
I've
2,000
heard,
more than I knew of. So
I've heard numbers up in the tens of thousands across the whole country, but I can't verify that. And nobody's volunteered for that job. I don't know what all it would require. They'd have to be a federation level recorder who could go in and look at everybody's. But, optimistically, maybe there's several thousand, several tens of thousands, maybe.
Well, let's be honest. There's a level of statistical advantage to not knowing a number while people are trying to figure it all out and grow with it. So I'm okay with not knowing a number. I was just
Right.
wondering if there was a growth expectancy between now and the next 10 years, 5 years, whatever. Hopefully it picks up. People start to wake up and do something.
It seems there's a common thought out there that people are going to slowly but surely be backed into our corner of jurisdiction. That there's all these different ways of correcting your status. There's all these different ways of saying who you are, legally and lawfully, and one or the other. Very few of them are actually focused on not only correcting status but reconstructing, because the reconstruction did not technically happen, because Civil War was not technically ever ended by the states, the land jurisdiction states.
Real quick, with the credentials. So, what about the passport, or is that part of the credentials card?
That is something that there is a method that people follow after they've corrected their status to then get a new passport, in theory, as an American national. We still don't have a lot of verification if it's doing what we think it's doing, but people have done that, and some people have been able to go around TSA in the airports. If it's done right, you're given almost a diplomatic status, but I don't think it's always done right. And I don't know that. I haven't done it yet. I'm trying not to travel too far.
So, I'd like to chime in on identifications.
Okay.
I stopped carrying my driver's license, I think maybe about 6 months ago. This is maybe some people might think it's a bizarre story, but I was in a Walmart, and at this particular day, I did have my driver's license with me. Well, because of all this stuff, propaganda, should I say, going around about this supposed virus, and people with the right to choose, it's my body, my choice, all of that kind of stuff. The thought came to my mind that, okay, well, if I get stopped and I get questioned for identification, and I show them this driver's license, which I know my research has taught me it's a contract giving law enforcement permission to give you a citation. And I'm thinking, I've corrected my. So if they stop me and ask for ID and say something like, why don't you have a mask on? That's what went through my head. So when I got home, I put it up in a drawer and I just stopped carrying it. So the only identification I carry now is my credential card. And then, like Paula said, there is a family here on California, a husband and wife. I think they have offspring, but they were on a town hall meeting and they traveled across state line from California to I believe it was New Mexico, and they had their passports, but all they showed were their credential cards. And
That was
they got
Mexico.
into the other state, no problem. Oh, was it Mexico? Yeah. Okay. So they traveled into Mexico, no problem, and they came back into the United States, no problem, showing only their credential card. I am also very active on Telegram, and I saw a video that somebody had posted of a guy. I think he was in an airport, and all he showed was his American State National credential card, and he had no problems. So we are making waves. We are
Awesome.
editing the de facto of our corrected status. We do have diplomatic immunity. We do have diplomatic immunity to the corporate government. You know, and I mean, it is going to take some time to educate them, because all of us were brainwashed for over 150 years thinking that this was the right way to live, when it's not.
And the longer it's going on, the more it's just getting embedded in people's heads. This is just as completely normal.
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
Right.
I think I have one last question, and then we can go into like final thoughts and whatnot, because I know we're getting close on time. But and I think this would apply to everybody involved. When you think back on your process to correct your status, right? I believe I said it earlier in the show. The more I look into it, the more questions I end up having. What would you classify as being the quote unquote scariest part, if you will?
Good question.
For you, if there was a scary, sorry, I had a really loud car just drive by. I'm in my garage. Was there anything that you were fearful of, basically? And if so, how'd you get over that, and what'd you discover?
That's kind of what drove me into it, was fear.
Yeah.
Fear for my family, fear for my children. But in doing it, you have to face your fear. And once you even begin to get a hold on to who you are, who we are born as,
That's right.
that fear goes away. You know, and there's still you can always fear something. There's always something to fear. But does it get you where, you know, I mean, does it help to fear it? You know, I don't
fear
know.
my beard getting shaved off.
There's some healthy fears. You don't want a cold chin in December.
Nick. Oh, the reason why I ask is I think inherently fear stops a lot of people from doing things. There's a thing that I saw a very long time ago that basically said, when you're afraid of doing something and you finally do it, and you face that fear and you've completed whatever it was, you find out that there's nothing really to be afraid of. Think about the first time you went on a roller coaster. You may have been absolutely terrified, but you get off that roller coaster and you're like, hey, let's go again, you know? And the reason why I wanted to ask that question specifically for you two was there anything that you were fearful of that would make you hesitant in any way, shape, or form? Because I think a lot of people out there, when they start going down this road and they start doing the research, they go down that proverbial rabbit hole, if you will, right? I think they're going to find a lot of stuff that might actually scare them. Not that it's a bad thing. What I'm saying is, from the other side of the fence. Farris is so much better with words than I am. He should be the co-host of this show, not me. But, but what I mean is, like, for example, the article that we read last week. Okay, it was written solely to combat the whole American State National. I don't
It
know
was
if you want
written
to call
so
it
well.
You'll
culture.
have to send it to me.
It was written
Yeah,
so well that
absolutely.
for a moment, I was like, "What am I getting myself into?"
Thank you, Nick. Exactly
Yeah.
the way that it was written, because
Who
it was written that
benefits?
way. Yes, it was written that way
They want-
purposefully,
they
right?
don't
So how
want-
many people are going to feel that way?
The government
Probably
don't
a
want to
lot.
lose us. They were making their money off of us, so they're going to try to put fear in people. Don't do this.
Right.
And that's
And
the
they
only way
did.
they have
When I first seen that
to
article pop up, before we even
persuade them.
talked about it between us, and I came across it one day, and for a minute in my head, I was like, "What am I getting into?" It did. They wrote
that's-
it. She wrote
The
that
enemy
article very well.
That's
wins
exactly
when
what
you
I'm talking
doubt
about.
every step.
Yeah.
Pat,
But
I
but
relate
we-
to you on
Right.
the team because I'm like the legal resident
Yeah.
for the team because I question
He's
everything.
always, what
It's
about
like, wait a minute,
legally?
wait a minute.
Everything we do,
Wait a
he
minute.
comes in, well, what about the legal side of it?
I mean, well, I actually ran across that article, and we'll send it to both of y'all.
But
great
what
thing
we
is
also-
we're-
In the
Um,
Facebook group,
What-
so that they've probably seen it. It was an article written by I don't remember the journalist. name,
Seattle
but
Times.
By the Seattle Times.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lady.
Oh, is that that was about Terry?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they
Yeah.
put her through the
was
mortgage
about
mill, an
Terry.
illegal
Exactly.
mortgage mill.
Yeah.
And
That's the article that the hosts keep referring to.
Yeah.
it was all bunk.
Well, not only was the
Okay, so-
article written to fear people, but even the way they came in
Full
on her, they
lies.
came in like it was a compound or something. They
Yep.
made a very good scene out of that whole
Drones, smoke bombs,
thing.
killed a
Yes,
dog.
crazy.
Yes.
guns.
Unbelievable.
She's like in her upper 60s.
Crazy stuff.
She stood her ground though.
She
Well,
did.
I kept saying
She
to
has
people-
the original land
If-
patent too.
I kept mentioning people. We always try to say, you know,
Mhm,
before you
mhm.
let that fear get to you, research. Look into it.
Right,
Don't just let
right.
it feed into your head and go, "Oh, well, I'm going to go with that." That's the problem with this country is everybody just, whatever they're told, they just go with it.
Bet everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So let me chime in here. As far as fear, when I corrected my status, I had no fear. Okay. I will put it this way. I think God prepared me for this based on everything I've been through in my life before I corrected my status. Because, like I said, my dad was a police officer for the de facto law enforcement. My ex-husband had been in jail for stupid, petty stuff, like drinking a beer in a park. I'm an American now. If I want to go drink a beer in a park, I'm going to do it. And the de facto better not try to put cuffs on me. Because as American national, we can do what is called a fee schedule. Okay? And this is based in law. Some codes that the government themselves wrote, where it says that if they arrest me,
The
now
fee
that
schedule.
I'm no longer a U.S. citizen, it's considered kidnapping, and I can charge them. If they take my DNA, I can charge them. If my
Remember?
fingerprints or my spit or my hair or whatever, I can charge them.
I've been
I
wanting to ask
have
about
my
that damn
notarized
fee
recorded
schedule.
fee schedule.
I've
I
been wanting to
have
ask
my
about that.
notarized recorded fee schedule on record, and I sent that with a copy of my paperwork that I sent to the county sheriff here on the county I live on.
I'm keeping that thing in my
So-
car.
Like I said, I had I had been studying sovereignty for 8 years before I corrected my status. So as far as that, I have no fear. I do have 2 parcels of land, but I don't have a mortgage because actually mortgages are unlawful. They are unlawful. And again, because of my profession, you know, I have some clients that have issues with their mortgages. And, you know, there are times I'm sitting here on my computer for 3-4 days researching to find appropriate laws to put in documents that I write for my clients. And I have a client right now. She is, should I say, more proactive than some of my clients because she's fighting a mortgage issue and she has a land patent. And for those of you out there that don't know, a land patent is the true ultimate title to land. When you have a land patent, de facto law enforcement has no right on your property, period.
Period.
So anyway, this client of mine, she has a land patent. So I was doing research for her case, and some of the stuff that I read, it just blew my mind. Basically, if you have a land patent, like I said, nobody can come on your land unless you invite them. Now see, sheriff's officers, well, all people that hold de facto positions, whether it's the mayor, the governor, the president of the United States, the sheriff, they all call it an oath of office. The sheriff's departments, I have a copy of the oath of office for the sheriff's department here in Mendocino County. And it says in their oath of office, they are to uphold the Constitution. I don't remember if it says of or for, because there's 3 different constitutions as well. But I'm an American national. I'm under the Constitution for the United States of America, which is the organic Constitution, which was the first one written. I think it was in 1787. Paula, please correct me if I'm wrong. But under that Constitution, my rights have to be upheld, period. And if the sheriffs don't uphold my rights, I can charge them. And I know how to do the process, and I will charge them if need be.
I need your number.
Right now.
I'm with Nick on that one. We might be giving you a call.
I gotta tell you,
okay.
I'm so glad you mentioned the fee schedule.
All right.
Nobody's ever mentioned that, and I always wondered about it. I was like, is this boo?
Well,
Nobody seems to talk about the fee schedule.
Yeah, Nick kind of got he got a copy of I think it's the fee schedule. Is that what it's called, right?
Yeah, it's called.
And he kind of showed it to me, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? But I think that one would be a question probably for another episode. But
yeah, it's gonna be
right. You asked that, Leo. Is this an order? And if he's making an order, just like at Burger King, you give him the fee schedule.
Did you hear that? So you're not too far off, I think, by keeping it in the glove box of your truck there, buddy. I'm just saying.
Mine's in my car, along with all my other paperwork.
I love it.
There you go. Well, dude, we are going to learn so much doing this.
So anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I've just seen too much corruption, so I'm not fearful. I will admit,
I think she's
that
motivated.
if I'm driving, I should say traveling, because driving is a commercial term. But if I'm traveling in a vehicle and I get pulled over by de facto law enforcement, I might get nervous and I might stumble upon my words. But I'm like Paula, I have a travel packet that I carry with me, and I've got a bunch of documents in there. I have a bunch of U.S. Supreme Court case laws that say because I'm not using the vehicle in commerce, I don't have to carry a driver's license. I don't have to have insurance. I have an insurance bond, so I don't pay monthly insurance premiums. I have a bond. I'm not using my vehicle for commerce. And commerce is deemed as if I'm transporting people or products for pay. So like people who drive for Lyft and Uber, yes, their vehicle has to be registered. But if I have a job, say, for example, I have to drive to a lawyer's office and I'm going to work every day, or I'm going to school every day, I'm using my vehicle in commerce. So I'm by law, according to the U.S. Supreme Court case law, I do not have to pay registration fees.
Well, I like it.
My wife isn't going to become one, at least not right away, because she still there's things through the government she has to have, like certain benefits. So if I do something and it's like, well, that's kind of considered commerce, I just let her drive.
You sneaky man, you.
I'd be more than happy to talk to her.
Yeah.
Nick, I would be more than happy to talk to your wife if you like.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, for those of you out there that are listening, if you want my phone number to call me, if you need some help with something, my number is 707-354-0658.
Your phone gonna blow up.
There's you get that?
Man, it's
Well-
really good.
I already had it,
Well,
but I
that's
wasn't
okay,
gonna
because
share it.
I'm
Right.
very passionate.
Right.
I see
Well,
that.
thank
You're
you,
gonna
Mary,
get
but
people
I'm-
pumped up to
that-
become
that's
one
all-
of these things.
That's okay, because I am very passionate about helping people get out from the tyranny of the government.
I think that I've been preparing for this
So-
because I never voted once in my life.
That's good. That's really great. Yeah, because when you're a U.S. citizen and you vote for, you know, governor, mayor, president, you're voting for a corporation. You're
Mhm.
voting for like employees at Walmart or Target. You're not voting for lawful government. And that reminds me, there is a difference between legal and lawful. I read somewhere
Oh, yeah,
that
we've heard that.
legal is the undoing of God's law. Legal is codes and statutes. And there is U.S. Supreme Court case law that says codes and statutes are not real law, that
Okay.
common law is the law of the land. I know because I've read it. I study this stuff all the time.
Legal and law. That's right.
Yep, there's a difference between legal and lawful.
Well, we could go on and on, dude, but we're gonna have to get these guys back on again. I think. 'Cause they seem to
Yeah,
have
I
lots to
agree.
say.
I think we're gonna have to have a follow up at some point in time. For right now, I think, ladies, we're just elated that you were here. Super stoked to have received the information. This has been fantastic.
Awesome.
And again, yeah, we're definitely going to be reaching out to see if we can get you to come back because, as always, we just have more questions. I know I do.
Thank you so much. And try to make it to the California Town Hall one of these
Oh,
Wednesday nights.
absolutely.
I put the link in the chat. so-
Fantastic. Y'all, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to make a trip out of it. Nick, you come out here. Ferris, you get out here. Mary, you can come too. It's okay.
Hey,
Nick, you want to do the thing? You do the thing, Nick.
All right, folks. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Go to the description. We're gonna have a lot of links in this description.
We're gonna have a ton of links in the description to a ton of resources for everybody. And again, thank you so much for being here,
That's right.
and we'll see you next time.
Peace, everybody.
Bye.